Picture this. It is the still of night in some remote village in Nigeria's middle belt, place where faith is woven into daily life. Families asleep, churches quiet, children dreaming. Then violence erupts without warning. Gunfire, machetes, terror. Homes are burned, worshippers slain, villages laid to waste. Over the past years, this horrifying scenario has become all too familiar. Christian communities, pastors, elders, children have been killed, their churches destroyed, their homes stolen. These aren't isolated incidents. They are part of a pattern. But underlying much of this, believers say, is a simple yet chilling truth. Faith, particularly the Christian faith, has become a defining mark, the reason for the persecution. So today we ask how we get here. What forces have conspired to bring about such brutality? What are the stories of survival of faith amid fear, of communities that refuse to be silenced? And crucially, what must be done by Nigerians, by the global community, by each of us if this wave of violence is to be stopped? This is not only a story of horror, it is also a story of courage, of witness, of lives that refuse to be erased. Because every life lost, there is a name. In every village raised, a history. In every burnt church, a call to conscience. In the Gospel of Matthew, Christ warned his disciples, "You will be hated by all because of my name." For millions of Christians in Nigeria today, those words are not history. They are reality.
Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
Jason.
Hello, everyone.
How's it going?
It is going.
It is going. Just trying to, I said, my life is still marching toward a marriage, and so just trying to get, all that squared away, and
the weather
trying to get
nice.
trying to get the honeymoon squared away.
We're
trying to get that finalized, and so we finally. I know this week coming up, we're going to be moving the last bit of stuff out of Tracy's house. So we're going to be busy. So that should be it. Hopefully, she gets an offer on her home.
Hey, there we go.
Because I know she's been really anguishing over that, which I understand perfectly. I would be in the same boat. But hopefully that'll move. Maybe the interest rates will drop, and
there's enough stress going on right now with that added burden and stress.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been kind of crazy. But I mean, overall, life's been,
I have a friend of mine who's in the process of trying to get married as well, and they were supposed to have their ceremony out in this like big park. But because of the government shutdown, like they can't get anybody on the phone or to contact them and all that kind of stuff. So that's been a big thing too. That's like it's a weird
that government shutdown has just been. I mean, every day in the news now. Now I saw something with the Department of Education is fixing to get sacked.
Oh no,
a bunch of layoffs and furloughs probably.
Right.
But.
Crazy times.
It's crazy times.
Well, I remember Obama got put into office, and 30 days later, without doing anything actually in his life, he won the Nobel Prize.
Yeah, I saw that.
And President Trump just helped usher in, for actually the second time, a peace deal in the Middle East, and can't win the Nobel Prize. I'm kind of shocked at that. You would think for the last 2 years, all of the protests and massive people screaming and hollering about, peace in Gaza. Now that it's here, they're awful quiet right now. It leads me to believe that it wasn't about peace in Gaza. It was about killing the Jewish people. And just to have a reason to scream and protest. Because right now, in all of these universities that they were rioting and protesting, they should be celebrating right now, should we not?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to, we've kind of touched on that. It's just got, the other side of the political aisle is not going to give President Trump any credit for anything. No. I mean, it's sad because at one time our country, you could recognize something good that someone has done and actually give kudos to that person for doing that.
He could cure cancer. And the left would find fault with that.
It would, because that's just where we're at political. And I said we've talked about about all that before, but it's just where we're at as a society right now. But speaking of Gaza and Israel and all that issue and the killings that's been going on there, that's a perfect segue into what we're talking about today. This has not gotten a lot of play in the main media sources. I think it's just now starting to kind of permeate a little bit more.
I think there's a specific reason for that.
Well,
and that was the murder of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I think this whole what's been going on in Africa now.
Let me clarify. A Christian was killed on American soil for being Christian, and now. To you,
yeah. We've got a talk about we talk about what's been going on in the Middle East, and you hear the arguments on both sides, the Palestinians and the tragedies that are happening there, the Jews, that everything that happened on October 7th and all that, and the back and forth with all that, and of course that whole history of what's going on. It right now it somewhat pales in comparison to what's happening in Nigeria. The amount of bodies that are being stacked up right now, it's incredible. I didn't realize it was as bad. I mean, I've seen, it's kind of one of these things that you see an article pop up on some like secondary news source that you don't really kind of follow a lot, but it's not something you really pay attention to. But I'm beginning to see some mainline podcasters talk about this. I believe it or not, I was surprised that this topic was actually discussed by Bill Maher on his Real Time HBO show, which is quite incredible considering that Bill Maher is an atheist and he doesn't really, has really nothing much to say good about Christians. Or Christianity for that matter, but
then again, what if this were to open something up in his head and his heart, and bring him closer to peace?
There's no doubt. We're supposed to pray as Christians for all people, even though for people who reject what Christianity offers. But just the idea that this has now risen to where it's actually getting played on these very secular, sources.
Well, but right now, because of the Charlie Kirk killing, this is newsworthy. In the first 7 months of 2025, 7,000 plus Christians were killed in Nigeria. Just for the record, that's almost 34 a day on average.
Yeah.
Being murdered, beheaded, not counting the over 7,000 kidnappings also of Christians.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely,
and it's almost 8,000 kidnappings in Nigeria.
I think right now, from the sources I've read, and a lot of this is coming from an NGO out of Nigeria. I can't think of the name of it right now. I'm fixing to find it in my notes here. But I'll find it in a minute. But it's about 125 deaths since 2009. And
125,000 deaths.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And right now the ratio is about 70% Christian and about 30% Muslim. So, to be fair, there are Muslims that are being killed too, but I don't know how
who's killing I don't.
It would be there is a Muslim sect that has made it a point since about 2000.
Well, I read that they're killing the what's the word I want to use?
I believe it's called their Faluni.
No, they're the not the liberal, but the not the staunch Muslims, but
it's probably Muslims that are actually exercising a little bit of kindness and actually living,
or drinking, or
coexisting with other people,
yeah.
and don't feel like they got to go out there and pull out a machete and chop people's heads off.
So I was going to say, who is killing the Christians? Is it
It's the Muslims.
Okay. It's Muslims, and this is primarily a Muslim Christian deal, and Nigeria has about, I have to look at the numbers. Their number of Christians are in the millions, but they literally want to wipe Christianity out in Africa. Unfortunately,
and remember, Africa was Christian before it was anything.
It was.
That's where who went down there? One of the apostles. Somebody went down there. It was huge. The Ethiopian Bible. It's Africa was the cradle.
I believe the Christians, if I remember right, and I'm kind of I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure the Christians that are in Africa, or at least the ones that were in Egypt, were Coptic Christians, and Coptic Christians kind of separated themselves from what I would call, in essence, the Catholic Church, for whatever it was called at that time. So we're looking in the 200s and 300s.
Wow.
That they kind of separated, and they do have a bit of a different kind of bent in their teaching. But I believe the ones that are being killed in Ethiopia actually have a mix of Catholic, Methodist. It's a mix of different Christians that are being targeted.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, if you're not Muslim, they'll kill you. It sounds
simple. Like even if you are Muslim, they'll kill you.
But they don't see, if you're doing these other things, they don't see you as Muslim.
Right.
Yeah.
So the only Muslim is an extremist Muslim practicing to the letter.
Yeah.
Or you're an infidel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at a number here. It said 18,000 churches and Christian schools burned. Over 5 million people displaced since 2009, since this thing started. I mean,
that's crazy.
It's sad.
Was there something that started in 2009 that kicked off this? Was there?
I think it's part of the
political stuff.
I think it's just part of the jihad oriented nature of.
I see.
Of this particular sect of Muslims that are doing this, and I want to emphasize that not all Muslims subscribe.
Yes.
Unfortunately, though, there is a sizable percentage that do subscribe to this, especially in other parts of the world, because obviously it's happening, and you just can't ignore it and kind of play tiddlywinks with this stuff. You got to call out what it is, but. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. I was, of course, I follow some Catholic sources, and I was reading some news sources regarding the slaughter of priests, of nuns. Matter of fact, it made news. I mean, it said the number of Catholic priests, including scores of seminarians, abducted in Nigeria in the past 7 months of 2025, or from January 1st through August 10th, has risen to at least 15, out of which at least 5 were killed. In other words, not less than 160 Catholic priests, including some seminarians, have been abducted in the past 10 years, and at least 15 killed. So this is ongoing. It's they call it the Fulani jihadist is who's pushing this. So according to
there's also a couple of groups. It's the Boko Haram and the ISWAP, whatever that stands for, but it says jihadist insurgents. But remember, like in the Gulf War, when these areas were weak, the jihadists came in there and just started taking stuff and destroying buildings and books and statues and everything, because that's what they believe, that, those things don't promote their religion. And,
Yeah. Has the government said anything like their local government?
The government,
what?
They have their side of it. They basically say, but the problem is the government is made up of some of these jihadists. And
I see.
So you know how that goes.
Yeah,
so
they're in that point where Muslims don't necessarily conquer. They go in there and they infiltrate.
Yeah.
And then they, like the 80,000 Somalis brought into Dearborn, Michigan. And they come in, they take a little bit, they come in, they take a little bit, they come in, they take a little bit. They outbreed you 7-1.
Mm-hmm.
And then they always go on some type of a welfare system to disrupt your government, to disrupt the funds that you have. And then as they start taking bits and pieces, and what the Nigerian government is afraid of and waiting for is for them to turn on to that capital and go take the capital and just overthrow the government. They're not going to go fight the whole country in a war. They're just going to go take over that seat and then expand from there. And then if you don't convert, kill you. If you don't convert, kill you.
Yeah, basically the government calls it ethnic tension or resource conflict and banditry. So they're basically saying, no, it's not genocide. It's, they're just kind of playing it down.
Well, they don't want to call it genocide because then other parties have to get involved.
They said behind closed doors, some officials quietly admit that while what the press releases, do not. They speak of underfunded security forces, political complicity, and a fear, not of extremists, but of acknowledging how deep the fracture runs. One former intelligence officer tells me off the record, you want to know the truth? Everyone knows what's happening, but saying it out loud would set this country on fire.
Oh, yikes.
And unfortunately, this is happening in these villages. And, it's kind of like happening out in the rural areas. And everything is fine in the city, so no one, is really talking about it that much. Yeah, they said, back in, some of these, I'm just kind of reading some of these stories of some of these people they've interviewed. And, it's incredible of the amount of faith these people have to be able to, knowing they go to church, it could be, that could be the end. Literally, they don't know when people are just going to show up with machetes and start attacking them. That's just terrifying. Where it's at. And they keep coming back. It's unbelievable. It's a testament of true faith. Mm-hmm. Of people willing to sacrifice it all. I tell people, I say that all the time. That's where, the blood of the martyrs. That's what caused the faith to blow up the way it did when the Romans were persecuting the earliest Christians in those early centuries. And all it did was, it's like fertilizer. And I think when people see people willing to die for their faith in a good way like this, I'm doing nothing but I'm worshiping God in church, and then all of a sudden we get attacked by some nut jobs that somehow feel like their God is telling them to wipe me out because I'm an infidel. It's just nuts. And I don't know what can be done, but it just blows my mind that this story, the tragedy of this story, is what it is. The numbers are there, the tragedy is there, but yet it's just not talked about. But because it's not Gaza and Israel and stuff like that, it just kind of gets like, oh well, who cares?
Well, but you see, we're looking at the first 7 months of 2025. But it's not just that. 2022 was 5,800 killed, 23, 5,600, 24, 4,900. So these numbers are stacking.
Yeah, they say half the deaths occurred in the middle belt of the northern states.
Right.
And they say Christians make up the majority of those victims.
You're right, though. About standing up for what you really believe in and all that kind of stuff is a different thing, I feel like, here in the West, and especially Christianity and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like we always hear stories about all things like this in a far off country, but like it's different. They're like, I don't know, it's scary.
Yeah,
to think you could just go to church on a Sunday and then of course get killed.
Yeah, the capital of Plateau State. It's a city that was once called the home of peace and tourism. And this is kind of the front line of where all this is happening. It's just talking about this person. He's Pastor Emmanuel Dogo. He says a soft-spoken man in his 50s, and wearing a faded white shirt and a cross carved from local wood. He says church has been attacked 3 times. The last time they burned the pews and left a message on the wall. It said, "You were warned."
Oh, dude. And the faith and the bravery to go back. That's the part that rocks my world. That makes me feel convicted.
Yeah. When you look back over time, this is not something new. In the first and third centuries, there were sporadic Roman persecutions, and the numbers are uncertain, in quotes. From 303 to 313, there were about 4,000 executed, with some scholars arguing up to 20,000. In medieval times, there is no way to know those numbers.
Yep.
So they kind of bounce over that and then go to 1915 to 23 with the Ottomans, and there were about 1.2 Armenian Christians killed, with 250,000 Assyrians killed. In the 30s, 106,000 Orthodox clergy were shot between 37 and 38.
Wow.
With another broad faith-based deaths, but those were unknown. But they're signaling out the clergy to kind of hit it from somewhat of the top. In Spain, 36 to 39, almost 7,000 clergy and religious killed. Many lay Catholics were also murdered. That's just crazy. And in Mexico, think about this. This is right down the border. In 26 to 29, just mass repression and war deaths were 200 to 250,000. Recognized many Catholic martyrs among the dead. 2000s today. Now we're looking at, all over the world.
100-something thousand, yeah.
Yeah.
At least in Nigeria.
And the Christians are now being harassed in 160 to 166 countries across the world.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just terrible right now what's going on with this, but this is happening, and right now they say Christians were 6.5 times more likely to be killed in violence. When accounting for state populations, Christians were 5.1 times more likely to be victims of abduction.
Man.
For years, we've heard calls for help being ignored as terrorists attack vulnerable communities. Now the data tells its own story. So according to the report, 81% of civilian killings were land-based community attacks. About 42% of those killings were carried out by armed Fulani herdsmen, which the researchers said invaded small Christian farming settlements to kill, rape, and abduct and burn homes.
Oh, dude.
Fulani herdsmen, who are Sunni, okay, I was just wondering what part, they were Shiite or Sunni, killed at least 9,153 Christian civilians and at least 1,473 Muslim civilians in community attacks, according to the data. Now, this report I'm reading is from 2024, so it's this is not the most accurate. So I think that's probably more than that now.
Wow.
They say about 41% of the land-based community attacks came from a variety of groups, which the report characterizes as other terrorist groups. However, the report states that the other category likely consists of different groups of Fulani bandits who are as much part of the Fulani ethnic militia as the armed Fulani herdsmen.
Man. It also makes me think there's a lot of there's a different kind of persecution, I feel like, in the States towards Christianity. Like nothing.
It's the attack on the family, I think, personally, and I'm just throwing that out there. Yeah. I mean, and you may differ and disagree, but I would love that part of the discussion to happen because I kind of have that in some notes to talk about.
It's more so like what I mean by that is there's a lot of persecution, I feel like, towards Christianity in the States, about people that I think were raised Christians and they're trying to deconstruct their faith and go away from it. And yes, I feel like there are some churches that are probably not the best and probably have poor leadership and whatnot, but it's crazy to see I don't know anything about these churches or these groups that are here we're talking about, but if they are truly just peaceful people that are going to church and trying to worship God in their own way and practice Christianity, they're being killed for it. I feel like it'd be hard for someone to speak out against that.
Nina Shia, the director of Hudson Institute's Center for Religious Freedom, told CNA that the numbers killed and abducted are staggering, and the documentation is now irrefutable. Fulani militants are waging a religious war, a jihad against undefended Christian farming communities in large swaths of Nigeria, she argued. Equally undeniable and shocking is the fact that the Nigerian government has idly watched and tolerated these relentless attacks over many years. The goal of the militants to eradicate the Christian presence by murder, forcible conversion to Islam, and driving them out of their homeland appears to be shared by the government in Abuja, the capital of Nigeria, or else it would take action, which that's what I'm saying. I think they're probably complicit in it.
Yeah.
They say Nigeria was first included on the list in 2020, the final year of former President Donald Trump's administration. However, it was removed in 2021 during the first year of President Joe Biden's administration. The DOS report blamed the Nigerian violence on intercommunal clashes and a competition for resources. Well, no, that surprised me because they're catering to the Muslim population is what it is. I hate to say it, but it's just the truth of the matter. I don't know what the fix is on that. Look, I've said all along, we've been at war with that religion since the 6th century. The historical backdrop of that religion, it's a religion of the sword. It has always been that way since its very beginning. And I don't understand how you can reason with that. I really don't.
Well, I think times are different, and we come back to the hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men create hard times. I'll put it to you like this. In 1785, the Maria and the Dolphin, the crews of 21 men were enslaved by the Barbary pilots. 21 people was enough for Jefferson to send the Marines to completely obliterate them. And I mean, families, dogs, cats, goats, everything. And then you don't hear from them for another 170 years. 21 people. Not 7,000 Christians, not anything going on. So you kind of got to wonder what's going on. But an interesting statistic that I found, religion accounted for 0.07% of the mainstream coverage in 2011. And that number is very specific, which is down from 2.0% in 2010. And the reason that number is so so insignificant, is because after 2011, it was so small, they quit counting it. Think about that. And so you wonder why all of this is getting covered sporadically, and it's only getting covered since now it's getting clicks. Now it's newsworthy because somebody had to get murdered on American soil, and now it's okay to talk about spirituality and religion again because it's getting clicks. It's people are watching it. What's the old expression? They're selling newspapers now.
But I hear what you're saying, but I think it's also like I think people are waking up now.
Sure.
I think that even people that were, I don't want to say sympathetic, but people that align themselves more with, I think, the left, I think ever since that happened, I think even those people have gone more to the middle or more toward the right.
Well, we've talked about for a while that pendulum swinging, right? Would that be kind of what you're saying too? That pendulum is swinging?
Potentially, but what I'm hearing, I don't think it's all. How do you word this? I don't think that everyone's talking about religion and Christianity and all that kind of stuff because it's getting clicks. Like, yes, that's true, and I think it's focusing on that. And obviously, I think news outlets and people like that focus on what, of course, people are talking about. But it's more so the fact that I think people are actually interested in going to church again. People are interested in what the real foundations of Christianity is about.
See, I agree with that. People are talking about it. Why is the mainstream media covering it now? Well, because people are clicking on it.
Of course, yeah. But at the same time, I do think that there are people that genuinely, I think, are shifting. I think there is a shift happening.
No, I agree with that. But that's people. I'm talking about the media again.
But media is also people too. And I think there are some media groups I think that are changing. I could be wrong though, but anyways.
Well, right now, I think according to this inter-society, that's just where a lot of this data is coming from this NGO in Nigeria. It's called Inter-Society. But they basically, the goal is to eliminate the 113 million Christians by 2075. That's the long term. So, yeah, I mean, this is a terrible situation right now.
Well, this is also part of the UN 2030 agenda of ending the family, ending you being able to raise your own kids. The Christian American family is one of the strongest forces in the world and will always be.
Yeah, it says our further investigation clearly showed that the abduction of hundreds of Christian clerics and killing or disappearance of scores of their colleagues, especially those working for the Catholic Church in eastern Nigeria, escalated after mid-2015 and brought about by a combination of Islamic jihadist attacks and attacks by criminal entities driven by violent transactional quest or interests, including targeting exotic cars belonging to victim Catholic priests for sale through their criminal syndicates or forcing guardians associated and relatives of victim clerics to pay huge ransoms, running into tens of millions of naira or tens of thousands of dollars per abducted cleric. So there's a transactional element to some of this. But yeah, I've kind of followed a lot on the Catholic side because I'm always interested in kind of following some of that news. And I've been reading about another priest that his head got chopped off by somebody hacking. Some of this stuff is actually quite graphic. I was reading a story of a survivor of what happened and that killed his parents and basically macheted him on the neck. Luckily, he survived.
Gosh, that's
and left him just out in the middle of the, in the little these villages and stuff. But it's just terrible stories of what these people are doing, and some of this is just, you got the authorities that are complicit in this, and look, Africa doesn't generate much international news.
Right.
It just doesn't. But even though there's a lot of resources in that country, I'm surprised that it's not more, because there's a lot of oil in Africa. A lot of other things there that you would think that would draw interest, but as of right now, none of that is. It's
probably not the main worry. There's probably. I feel like if Africa was a priority, I feel like we'd be hearing about it, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, they say right now the United Nations population estimates for Nigeria is around 238.5 million.
That's what, 2/3 as big as America.
Yeah, Nigeria is home to about 113 million Christians, like I said before, including 32 million indigenous Christians and 8 million non-indigenous Christians in the north, and 70 million Christians, including 68 million indigenous and 2 million pastoral or non-indigenous Christians in the south. So there's all there. I said, Christianity is very much well established there, and it's been there for a long time, and goes back to the early times of Christianity. I mean, it's. Some would say they were Christian before much of Europe became.
They were Christian before Europe was.
Some parts of Africa were. I would say the area bordering the Mediterranean, especially Egypt and probably areas of where Libya.
It's still Africa.
Yeah. So all of that is, those were some of the first, because, that was very much part of the Roman world at that time. And so it had been very easy for those, early...
when they started persecuting them, they scattered. And guess what? South was part of the way they went.
Yeah. So it's a... this is a tragedy. And I don't know, our given this topic its due regard. That's one of the reasons I brought it up. I think it's something important that we get out there, that the more awareness is brought up, that, maybe there's some pressure on getting in there and trying to at least try to rectify this problem.
But then also maybe not even rectifying their problem, but safeguarding America from the same thing happening.
And I'm telling you.
Okay, because when
that can happen here.
Well, it's happening. The Obama administration brought in 80,000 Somalis and dumped, 48,000 of them in Dearborn, Michigan.
And these people they're not Christian Somali.
They're not Christians.
There's a Muslim
yes,
Somali.
They're Muslims. That was intentional. That is how Ilar Oman married her brother, came into this country illegally, and they elected her into office. So that's happening here. That is part of the standard of what they do. They come in and they just start taking little bits and little bits. So this is a wake-up call for America, because like we just said, they're 2/3 the size of America, so obviously it can happen. Now, obviously, America also is a little bit different on the inside with a stronger government, but a government that has its sights on a whole bunch of other stuff other than protecting its citizens right now. So I asked artificial intelligence to look back over history at when a Muslim movement happens into a country that is predominantly Christian or another religion. How long does it take for these type things to happen? Less than 2 years. Less than 2 years. And you saw this happening like with the war in not Afghanistan. What was the other war? Iraq. How long did it take for the insurgents to come in and start destroying buildings and statues and killing and raping people and beheading people, and doesn't take long at all. And America is on that verge.
Well, some people would say with the 4 years of basically an open border that there are enough of those types of people now in the United States that some sort of organized action could begin. I mean, you think about some rural area that is kind of off the map a little bit. I mean, think you get an organized group of these people that choose to, now, of course, you have the potential of these other people being armed. But, there's a lot of areas that, people are not armed. I mean, they would be at the mercy of a well-armed group with the intent of doing a lot of damage.
Well, I wrote a short story years ago thinking about this. They believe there is over 40 million illegal immigrants in America. What if 1% of them were planted here for that? What is 1% of 40 million?
400,000.
That's half of our army size. Because most of our guys are elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I say guys loosely. Let me rephrase.
Right. Our military personnel.
Our military ladies, people. I'm sorry. That's not my heart. I think y'all know me. I can be a butthead sometimes, but that's not how I think. Our men and wonderful ladies of the military are outside this country. So how many are still here? Luckily, we have the Second Amendment. But what if it's just 1%? What if it's 2%? What if, like you just said, what if some of those people were sent here intentionally to pick up arms one day?
I mean,
it's coming.
Well, I think there's some people that want that.
Oh, I agree with you.
I mean, I don't, but I think it's going to come to a point where you're going to have to defend yourself. I mean, I'd be honest with you. I always, when I'm at church on Sunday, there's always a part of me always eyeing the door. Mm-hmm. Because this is going to be the day where something happens.
Well, I was the director of security of one of the largest churches in Louisiana for not this very reason, but for a similar reason. I mean, it's coming, it's happening. And I was researching this show. I watched this video, and I had seen it a couple of weeks ago, and I watched it again. It was about a Muslim imam who is a religious leader, and he said, in a Muslim country, the woke people will be dead. If you were gay, lesbian, transgender, blah, 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 you'll be killed by sunset. But in America, we love the woke agenda. We support the woke agenda. We encourage the woke agenda. Because when enough of that is going on, the only savior for America is going to be Islam. And when that country breaks is when we will step in. So when you have the liberal Democrats causing government shutdowns intentionally, what is it going to take to have that shutdown of our infrastructure? Because think about that. This is when they take action. The Iranian war, this war, that war. All they're waiting for is sitting there in place, waiting for something to happen. How many times do we hear the Russians and the Chinese and all these other countries are waiting to drop some EMPs on our power grids? How many times do we have attacks on our infrastructure? That our wonderful men and women of the working part of the government right now are, stopping. Well, right now the government's shut down. I heard a saying the other day on one of the news channels that Doge came in and fired a bunch of these scientists that they proved were just taking money from the government, not producing anything, but then also said this is the first time in recorded history that there was no named storms that hit the continental United States in June, July, August, September. and we're halfway done with October.
Wow.
What does that mean? Think about that. That's kind of an outrageous statement.
I don't think anything's outrageous anymore.
But now that the people aren't pushing the button in the weather channels, the computers controlling the weather, we're just waiting for one thing to happen for somebody to attack this country, and it's coming. And the Christians have to stay strong. This country was founded. What?
Nothing.
Go ahead. Fire back at me.
I don't believe anybody's controlling the weather. That's the only thing I was going to say.
It was kind of facetious, but it's kind of
right.
funny when you look at it.
It is quote unquote funny when you look at it, because I've also heard the same thing. They're saying it's the Jews. The Jews control the weather. The Jews control everything. So that's what they say. But of course, I do believe that to a certain extent. But the weather, no, I don't.
They say right here, it said according to a special report by Truth Nigeria dated September 4th, 2025, titled "Inside." When I pronounce some of these terms, I don't really. I'm doing my best. Rejana, Nigeria's forest of Christian hostages. No fewer than 850 Christian hostages are languishing inside Rejana Forest, near the Nigerian Army base located in Kashia County, southern part of Kaduna State. In our special report of August 10th, 2025, Kaduna State was listed as one of the states with the highest number of kidnapped Christians since December 24, January 25, to August 10th of 2025, with not less than 800 cases. However, emerging statistics have indicated the state has now recorded the largest number of kidnapped Christians in Nigeria in the past 10 months, with no fewer than 1,100 cases, out of which about 20 have been monetarily freed, including 8 freed in February and scores killed in jihadist captivity. And then here you got Christian children abducted in the east and converted to Islam in the north. Several reports of systematic and coordinated abduction of Christian children of underage from Eastern orphanage homes and their forceful enrollment for conversion to Islam at Islamic centers run by several northern state governments, including Kebbi and Kano, have continued to trend in the media, especially social media. A recent case was a 4-year-old, I can't make out the name, and I apologize, of Nursery 2 at Catholic church-run St. Teresa's Nursery and Primary School, Nina Farm area of Nuzguzby, and a bunch of other names. He was abducted months ago and taken to faraway Kebbi State Islamic Orphanage Center in Brennan, Kebbi, for conversion to Islam. So this is going on too. Yeah. So not only you have killing, they're also abducting babies and bringing them to...
Which makes you think about the Manchurian Candidate. Where are some of those children going to go? Are they going to be put into government? Are they going to be put into this? They're doing it for a reason.
I have a pretty big question, but I'm waiting.
Fire away.
Are we ready?
Yeah. I'm just right now, these reports are very, there's a lot of detail to them. So I'm trying to kind of piece through and pull up some of this stuff that I think is relevant to the conversation. Yeah. So it's, but I mean, it's just incredible of some of this stuff.
We haven't had a proper crusade in over 500 years.
I was thinking the same thing. Here's what I was going to say. Hold on. I was going to come out. I was waiting for him to. I was going to say, you can say what you want about medieval times, but if some of these kings would have found out that some Christians were being held, there would have been a crusade. How many was there? Like 2 or 3 real crusades? They counted them as one.
There's like 12 or 14 of them, but the first 4.
There's like 3 or 4.
The first 4 are the one most.
I was thinking.
I think the last one. The last one was in 1517.
Because I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, so it's been over 500 years, and I know that obviously.
Is there a time for a crusade in our own country?
No. What I was going to say was, yes, that is a great. That is a way. Hopefully, I was hoping the conversation goes in that direction, maybe a less official. I know a lot of times the Pope is supposed to call on and I know that's gone out of favor. Hold on, wait, hold on.
Pope
wait. Hold on. Give me a second. Damn it. I know that in histories past, the Pope has to be the one to call on a crusade, and I know that fell out of favor when the church no longer was militarized and was more diplomatic and all that stuff. My question was, the big question I was going to ask is what do you think would have to happen for the Pope to call on another crusade,
a new Pope,
for real?
Well, I mean, let's
this Pope's never going to do it.
Since I'm a history guy,
yes.
I've read a lot about the Crusades.
Yeah.
What led to the Crusades, why they happened to begin with. You have to really go back to the time of when Islam emerged out of Arabia, and they started conquering areas that were all once Christian lands, which, our faith really, most of our holy places, all the relics, were all in the East. Part of what we would call the Byzantine Empire, which would have been the Eastern Roman Empire. Eventually, this started basically imposing things on Christians trying to go, because at that time pilgrimages were still very much a part of the religious fabric of a Christian's life. You pilgrim to a holy site, and it would give you graces. It would, the church would call those indulgences. You would go, and it's kind of ways of earning merit, so to speak. And of course, not really that, but that's kind of the best way I can kind of describe it at the moment. So time goes by. Eventually, these become very hostile. So eventually, Christians start forming groups to go and kind of protect these pilgrimages.
Right.
And unfortunately, if you read anything about Islam almost really conquered Europe.
Yeah.
It was Charles Martel, if I'm not mistaken, stopped the Islamic invasion, because otherwise it had already gone into Spain. It was starting to go into France. And it was a big battle, and we were able to repulse. And eventually, it started falling back. We reclaimed Spain. That's the Reconquista that you hear about. But the Pope basically needed a way to, in essence, unify Christendom. The church has always looked at, from its very beginning, of this term that's kind of out of favor now, but it was called Christendom. It was this idea that all of them were bound by their common kind of historical lineage of they were Christians.
Yeah.
They derived their religion from Jesus Christ and what grew out of that. So even though when Rome collapsed in the West and these independent kingdoms kind of started to take the place, they were still united in this idea that we're still, in essence, kind of like Romans.
Yeah.
We really are, because that's our spiritual legacy. We come from that. So eventually what happens is, what starts happening typically, then all these Christian kings started fighting with each other, right?
Of course.
Okay, so the Pope is probably pulling his hair out going, why are you killing each other? I need to find some way of trying to mobilize these Christian kings to something else, to unify.
Yeah.
So he makes an appeal. So, okay, that was Pope Urban. I mean, it was not Urban, it was Innocent. Probably one of the strongest popes ever. I believe it was Innocent III. Or it may have been Innocent I. I'm not sure. It's somewhere in the 1100s.
Yeah.
That he makes a plea for if Christian warriors would go, it would actually be a remission for their sins. Okay, so but what happens is, I mean, we say now, why can't the Pope call for a crusade? The fact of the matter is, the Pope doesn't have an army. He had to rely on these medieval kings to be able to mobilize armies to go and do this. So because
I've got to interject there. He was also greedy. And when the Crusaders, or let's just say the true Knights of Christ, the Templars, became richer than the King of France, the King of France passed a law that says you cannot be richer than the King of France. So he called his buddy, the Pope, on his phone and said, hey, I need you to excommunicate these guys, and then tried to assassinate over 1,000 of them on the first Friday the 13th. But they missed the Templar treasure, but it was the Templars that were the original guards of the Pilgrims. And what they did was they invented banking, they invented checks, they actually invented the first banking fees, because the Templars didn't travel with you on your caravan. You went to a temple commandery in France or Spain or wherever you were, and they wrote out a check in code. And you took your wares, whatever you had, and you were going to hide this check. And then you took that check to the commandery that was at the bottom of the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. And they read it, deciphered the code, and for a fee gave you your money so you could buy and sell your stuff. Well, they killed the Pope's army because he got greedy, just like the King of France did. And they were going to split the treasures of the Templars. And that's when he lost his army, because now nobody would fight for him or any other pope, because they don't trust him, because if I do the wrong thing, you're going to excommunicate me and assassinate me. So that's how he lost his army.
Well, but at the time, though, I'm talking about long before we get to where that occurred. When Innocent first called, for a crusade,
it was Pope Urban II called for the first.
It was Urban II. So
Pope Innocent II, I think, came after him, though.
Okay.
Well, he was asking, why doesn't he have an army?
Well,
I was letting you know why any pope doesn't have an army.
But at the time, though, when he called
he had to build the army.
He had to appeal to these kings to answer the call for Christ to go and protect these pilgrims and to kind of reclaim some of these lands. That's where you get into the Crusader states and the Crusader kingdoms that were set up during that time.
But also, as the remission of sins, the king was not going to send his favorite soldiers. What he did was he took some of the most hardy, ruthless, criminal-type people, knighted them, sent them, and that's why it was said that one Templar knight equaled 20 to 30 Muslim warriors.
Yeah, because they
didn't send the nice guys. You sent the monsters.
They were the special forces of the day.
They were the original.
They were of the day. But
yeah.
But you ask now what happened. So I mean, as time goes on, you know, we're talking over the span of a couple hundred years. So a lot of things happen in 200 years.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, that's just the way the world works. And unfortunately, you know, politics gets involved, and then of course, you've got the idea of the of course, then the Protestant Reformation hits in the 1500s. So in essence, the Pope today has really no one to appeal to mobilize on the scale at one time that it once had. So there is no, the Pope can say, hey, America send an army, hey, Britain send an army, Germany send an... That just doesn't exist anymore because, let's be honest, most people are not even religious anymore.
Right.
I mean, they're secularized. So there's the fervor of God motivating that I want to go defend, people and the idea of pilgrimages. And then there's also...
for God and the King. For God and the King. Right, that was the statement.
So that kind of paradigm that at once existed just doesn't exist anymore. And so the Pope doesn't really, he doesn't have an army. So, he could basically call for, violence should cease. And, I don't know what else he's supposed to do. Now, they work through diplomatic channels now.
Of course, yeah.
That's just the way the world works now. But and the Vatican is very much involved still in negotiation with all parts of the world and in various things. I'm sure they're involved in this Nigeria stuff and trying to, but I mean, you know, once again, you're dealing with a religion that we have been at war with since it came out of Arabia. And that's what people don't really quite understand is they believe they're still at war with us. You know, the Christian West has kind of moved on and they're not even thinking like that anymore. But for them, it is because their commands are pretty straight up. It's like, you're an infidel and you need to die. And I'm not saying all Muslims believe that, but you know, if you look at there's 1.8 billion Muslims or whatever the number is, if only 5% subscribe to that belief and act upon it, that's a lot of people.
Well, actually, I heard an imam talking in another video that said a non-radical Muslim is a Western term. Yeah. There's no such thing as a non-radical Muslim, period. If you're a Muslim, you're a radical. If you're a Muslim, you believe this, and this. Now, you may have been Westernized, but then that means you're an infidel.
Right. According to Islam, you know,
there's no non-radical Muslim.
According to Islam, I mean the Islam. It's, I don't know if it's Islam or Muslim. It basically means to submit, and their understanding of God is not like a Christian's, and it's a very fascinating subject of how Islam came about. With Muhammad, and he's an interesting character too, if he actually even existed. But
I think he did exist, but what he had to do was because when he first started his movement, he was trying to do it in his own city. And a lot of people didn't believe him. He had no success there. So he started moving into Jerusalem land, into Jewish lands. And then he started getting a following with some of the hard-lined people who saw some other things going on. So that's how he started moving out.
Well, yeah, he got run out of town.
He got run out of his own town.
Most Arabs, for lack of a better term at that time, really before Islam came about, generally had a different religious system of how they operated.
But then that's what he did was he pulled in Jewish beliefs, Christian beliefs.
Correct.
You know, Jesus is a prophet. This, and
he actually copied. I believe I've got an actual book on that as part of my stuff I read. But it's. Some of his ideas of Christianity come from a Christian heresy that was kind of prevalent in about the 5th and 6th century. If you read some of where he gets some of his things, it comes from that. And so that's probably where he got his ideas, because the fact of the matter is he went into these chieftains, why they end up signing on with this stuff is because basically Islam allowed them to do everything they were already doing before. Rape, pillage, and kill. That's right. I mean, that was kind of built into how
now they got a license
and
to
so
do it.
Now they've got a religious license to basically say, well, now Allah blesses you for doing that. So, hey, yeah, sign me up.
Yeah.
If I can still go out and have 15 wives and do what I want to do and kill my enemies, that's completely different than what the message of Christ was. Right? You know, the message of Christ was turn the other cheek and help your neighbor and love your enemy, which is completely opposite of what Islam teaches. So you wonder why it grew the way it did when you basically make it so easy. Where I can just do what I'm already doing and just call me a Muslim?
Because when you give somebody fear and an enemy, look at Nazism. Look what they're trying to do in America. They're giving you an enemy. They're giving you something to be scared of. That's how these things happen. Look at history.
Yeah,
as long as somebody can point and say, that's the reason for your troubles, that's what you're going to believe. All he did was give them something to hate. That's what Hitler did. That's what Stalin did. That's what all these people do. They give you something to hate and then tell you how to fix it. Let's kill that group of people. If you kill that group of people, all your problems are going to go away.
That's what I'm saying. We've been dealing with this religion for a long, long time, and people have to look at it in that sense and not look at it from a modern day lens, because we don't quite understand the mentality of what's going on right now in Nigeria. What's possessing these people to go out and just murder people?
Yeah.
But they're following the dictates of Muhammad. Plain and simple. You're not going to convert. You're not going to pay the tax. You're going to die. It's just what it is. We in our modern senses, we can't wrap our mind around that sort of mentality. But that is what it's always been for them. And at one time, when we did go fight them, we felt that way. We were willing to take up the sword and go out there and do this. And you could sit here and debate the Crusades. For most historians, they ended up being a failure. Right. They really, we didn't really accomplish it. The last, all the Crusader states that were eventually set up were eventually lost. And the only way that effort was ever going to succeed was the continued influx of Europeans that were willing to send knights and soldiers to go replenish that, because they got plenty of Muslims out there. They had plenty of guys they can grab to go do that. And then things happen in Europe. I mean, what other big thing happens right before the Protestant Reformation? Plague. The Black Death.
Yep.
A third of Europe gets wiped out, which included much of the clergy at the time. And so it was just the kind of the cohesion that existed at the time of Urban was gone. And it just eventually, the Crusades eventually floundered. And it's interesting if you read about it, especially read about the Fourth Crusade and what happened when they went out and they sacked Constantinople, why that happened. You would sit there and go, gee, what the world's going on, here? But it's like, and the Pope is here screaming, going, why are you sacking a Christian city? You're meant to go fight the Muslims. But that's just how things work, because it was the idea of how soldiering worked was you go out and conquer, you get the booty.
That's what's the saying? Follow the money.
Yeah.
Follow the money.
You had to pay.
People say we want peace in the Middle East. I'm sorry. Even before Christ came, for 4,000 years, they've been fighting in the Middle East amongst themselves over the merchant lanes. There's never really going to be peace there.
Yeah, it's just...
Okay? Even before Christ came, they've been fighting for 2,000 years over the merchant lanes, traveling here, traveling there. What do we call it? The supply war, or the natural... the crap. We've said it a couple of times. The... oil,
trade and
supply chains?
Not supply chain, but for water, this is where this brain damage is kicking my ass. For the resource war. Everything is about resources. Who's got this? Who's got that? You got the water, you got the dirt, you got this. Who's got the resources? Then you got to get it from point A to point B, and somebody's going to take it from you while you're traveling with it.
It's that's what I'm saying. It's just, it is. I mean, it's just, it's how these series of conflicts, these attempts. As I said, it was really the first four of the biggies. If you remember the movie Kingdom of Heaven, Ridley Scott, which I very historically inaccurate. And I unfortunately, I think he also falls victim to this anti-Christian, making the Muslims out to be these kind and civilized people. They're just as brutal and bloodthirsty as supposedly the Christians were. But that shows you a good, I think that represented the period of the Second Crusade, because when the First Crusade was very successful. It went in there and they took care of business. By the time the Second Crusade, things started falling apart. Then, of course, in the third, which the famous is King Richard the Lionheart, right? Yeah. He goes in there and confronts Saladin. They kind of basically get to a standstill, and then they work some deal out. But he ends up getting kidnapped on his way back home, and because there's forces back at home that'll seizing the throne. We get the Robin Hood stuff with King John. So they're just, the politics of this, and you get to the Fourth Crusade, you've got a king get an army together. They get to the Venetians. The Venetians say, "Hey, we're going to promise you, we're going to get booty from these conquests. We'll pay you back for all these ships you build." Well, come to find out, that didn't work out. So what do they have to do? They got to go sack Constantinople. Yeah. So I mean, it's just. They were a disaster. They really were. Now, do I believe they were justified based upon what motivated them? Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. They were needed. I think sometimes they really get knocked too much. Yeah. Because people forget why eventually the Pope had enough of hearing stories of what people were experiencing there. And he was also getting... People don't also realize he was also getting appeals from the Eastern Roman Emperor or the Byzantine Emperor to help, because they were dealing with these Muslim incursions more so than what the Latin West ever was dealing with. So, a lot of factors went into that. Oh, yeah. And then
I just think it's fun. Like I said, I knew it was gonna round out the episode probably with that kind of question, but I was curious about
we could do an episode on the Crusades. I've got a lot of books on that, and
I love it.
It's
that's
just
one part of history I've read a lot about.
That's where you get the idea of the knights and all that. That's kind of where all that kind of comes from, and it's just. You have to maybe do a YouTube video. What if? What if the Crusades actually were successful? What would have happened?
Right.
It'd been very interesting to see if somehow Christianity could have reclaimed all of those areas that were once Christian, how that would have changed things.
Right.
Think about that. If they would have been able to drive Islam back basically into Arabia and contain it there, and basically... Egypt, all of North Africa, all of the Middle East, consider would have remained Christian. How that evolution of those regions
500 years later,
would be different, because they would probably be very westernized, and they would probably be I would think probably better countries than they are now. But history happened the way it did, and here we are. So,
well, for anybody out there who wants to put in their 2 cents or let us know what you think about this, you can with all the comment sections on Spotify and YouTube. You also have the email address, getoffendedtogether@gmail.com, where you can send the more long-form responses, because I'm sure, as a lot of these heavier episodes do, I think, get people talking. We also have the website, retrospectpodcast.com. And with all that being said, until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone, and God bless.
We've seen the headlines. We've heard the silence. And if you felt the weight of it, the fear, the anger, the confusion, you're not alone. But let me remind you of something history keeps proving. The church doesn't crumble under pressure. It refines under fire. Evil thrives when good people stay quiet. But God's people were never called to be silent. They were called to be steadfast. This is the time to stand, not in panic, not in hate, but in truth, prayer, and unity. Every generation of believers has faced its trial. Ours just looks different. It's not lions in the Colosseum. It's apathy, distraction, and moral compromise. But the same spirit that carried the early church through persecution still carries us now. So hold your ground. Strengthen your families. Support your churches. Pray for courage, not comfort. Because hope isn't found in governments or headlines. It's found in Christ, and He has not lost a single battle yet. We're not victims of history. We are witnesses of His faithfulness. The darker the night, the brighter the light. Let's be that light together. You're the best. Peace.